He walks through the streets where shadows hide broken dreams and silence feels louder than hope. His stomach aches, his clothes are torn, but his spirit refuses to break. People point, they laugh, they whisper that he is nothing, yet deep inside his heart burns with fire no storm can kill. Every night, he closes his eyes not to sleep, but to see a world where he is more than what others believe. He has no wealth, no power, no easy path, only scars that tell him pain is real. Still, he rises with every fall, stronger, braver, unstoppable. This is not just his struggle, it is a mirror for anyone who ever felt small, lost, or unwanted. Tonight, his story will prove that no wall is too high, no chain is too strong, and no dream is impossible when faith stands taller than fear. His life was never painted with bright colors. It began in places where dreams were treated like strangers and hope was often silent. He grew up surrounded by walls that told him what he could not be, by voices that tried to crush his spirit before it could rise. Every morning meant another fight for survival. Every night meant another battle with doubt. Yet inside him lived a vision, fragile at first, but powerful enough to survive storms that should have ended him. He carried no silver spoon, no guiding hand, no map to success, only the strength to keep walking when the world pushed him down. This story is not built from comfort, but from scars, sacrifices, and endless nights of struggle. And what you are about to see will prove that even in the darkest places, one dream can light the way to greatness. From the very first breath he took, life seemed determined to test him. He was born in a small corner of the world where opportunity was scarce, where hunger was a daily visitor, and where dreams were seen as luxuries too expensive to keep. His home was not built from comfort, but from survival. Every crack in the wall told a story of battles his family had already lost. As a boy, he watched his mother's tired hands work beyond strength, watched his father vanish under the weight of endless disappointment, and felt the heavy silence that often filled their nights. Yet even in those shadows, he sensed a strange spark inside himself, a spark that whispered he was meant for more. When other children laughed and played, he stood apart, observing the world with eyes older than his years, eyes that refused to accept misery as destiny. He did not understand why he had been placed in such harsh conditions, but he knew pain was shaping him in ways comfort never could. The streets around him carried echoes of broken promises, and each corner revealed stories of people who gave up before life even began. He promised himself he would not be one of them. His childhood was stitched together with moments of hunger, rejection, and loneliness, yet those moments built a strength that could not be taught in classrooms or written in books. When he lay awake at night staring at the ceiling, he imagined a different life, a life where he could stand tall and prove that being born in struggle did not mean dying in struggle. He did not know how he would reach that place, he did not know when, but he carried the belief that survival alone was not enough. He was destined to rise. This was the beginning of his journey, the start of a story that would travel from darkness to light, from silence to a voice so powerful it could not be ignored. His struggle was not a curse, it was the foundation of something far greater, something that would one day show the world that greatness is often born from pain. As he grew older, the spark inside him was tested again and again by the cruel weight of reality. Every morning began with the same hunger, the same thin shoes that could barely hold together, the same streets that echoed with the laughter of those who never had to wonder where their next meal would come from. He walked past houses filled with warmth and abundance, yet returned to a home where empty plates told him that survival was the only victory of the day. School was no escape. There he was treated as invisible, sometimes mocked for his torn clothes, other times punished for daring to dream aloud. Teachers told him to be realistic, neighbors whispered he would follow the same broken path as many before him, and society placed labels on him before he had a chance to prove who he was. The rejection burned deeply, but the silence that followed was worse, for it tried to convince him that he did not matter. He watched friends surrender their ambitions, watched them trade their dreams for quick escapes that ended with regret, and he knew the same traps waited for him. Each day felt like a battlefield where his only weapon was determination, yet even determination felt fragile against endless walls. Nights were colder, filled with the sound of his mother's tears, and mornings began with the heavy weight of knowing that nothing would change unless he forced it to change. He often stood alone under the stars, asking questions no one answered. Why was his path carved with so much pain? Why did life give him a dream, yet chain his hands with struggle? The harsh reality did not only attack his body with hunger and fatigue, it attacked his mind with doubt and fear, trying to convince him to surrender before he even began. But even as the world pressed him into corners of despair, he clung to a stubborn belief that his story was not finished, that his scars were not signs of defeat, but maps leading him to something greater. The reality was cruel, but it was also shaping the unshakable will that one day would break every chain placed upon him. One evening, after another long day of rejection and silence, he made a promise to himself that he would not let the world decide his destiny. He stood at a crossroads where most people chose surrender, but he chose a path that demanded courage. The first step was small, yet it carried the weight of his entire future. He began by teaching himself skills with whatever little he could find. Old books, discarded notes, and borrowed wisdom became his weapons. He listened more than he spoke, studied the patterns of those who succeeded, and learned that knowledge could be a ladder out of despair. The nights that once echoed with hopeless thoughts now became hours of practice and determination. Even when exhaustion tried to drag him down, he pushed forward, reminding himself that pain was temporary but the dream was eternal. Slowly, his effort began to create sparks of change. A neighbor noticed his persistence and offered him a chance to help with small tasks that seemed unimportant but gave him a sense of dignity. That little recognition fueled him more than any applause, because it was proof that his struggle was not invisible. He saved every coin he earned, not to spend, but to invest in his vision. When others spent their evenings chasing comfort, he spent his nights building strength. The road was not smooth, and failure struck often, but each failure taught him a lesson that moved him closer to his goal. He started to believe that every rejection was not an ending but a redirection. Every closed door was leading him to one that would finally open. With each step, his heart grew stronger and his mind sharper. Though he still lived in poverty, he no longer felt powerless. The difference was not in the world around him, but in the decision he had made within. This was the beginning of his transformation, the moment when survival turned into ambition. The first step did not bring immediate success, but it created momentum that nothing could stop. And in that momentum, he discovered a truth that changed everything. Once you take the first step toward your dream, the universe begins to move with you. Despite every effort, life hit him harder than ever, testing the limits of his strength and the depth of his courage. One moment felt like progress, the next was disaster. Doors that had barely opened slammed shut, leaving him standing in the ruins of hope. Friends he trusted betrayed him, opportunities vanished without explanation, and even his small victories seemed meaningless against the weight of relentless obstacles. Exhaustion became a constant companion, and doubt crept into the corners of his mind, whispering that perhaps he was not meant for more, that perhaps dreams were only illusions meant to be broken. The nights grew longer, the silence heavier, and his heart ached not just for himself, but for the family that depended on him. Tears, once rare, flowed freely, yet even in despair, a stubborn voice inside refused to surrender. He faced moments where quitting seemed the easiest choice, where surrendering promised rest, where giving up could have ended pain. But as he teetered on the edge, he remembered the promises made to himself, the tiny sparks that had guided him this far, and the unshakable belief that his story was not yet finished. Pain became a teacher, betrayal a lesson, and exhaustion a signal that transformation was near. He realized that the breaking point was not a sign of weakness, but a gateway to strength, that despair could either destroy him or forge him into someone unstoppable. In that dark night of the soul, he discovered a truth he had never known. Sometimes the world must push you to your limit before you find the power to rise beyond it. With every failure, his vision sharpened. With every setback, his resolve grew stronger. And though the moment felt like the end, it was only the prelude to a new chapter, one where courage would not just survive, but thrive. The breaking point became his turning point, a silent promise that no force on earth could prevent him from reaching the destiny he had always imagined. Just when it seemed that every door had closed, fate placed a small opportunity in his path, almost unnoticed, almost insignificant, yet powerful enough to change everything. A mentor appeared, someone who recognized the fire in his eyes, someone who offered guidance without judgment and encouragement without condition. At first, he hesitated, afraid that yet another chance might lead to disappointment, but deep inside, he knew this was the moment he had been waiting for. He took a risk, stepped out of his comfort zone, and embraced the challenge with all the courage he had left. Every effort he made now carried purpose. Every decision became deliberate. Every action a step toward destiny. Slowly, the world began to respond. Small victories emerged where failure had once dominated, doors cracked open instead of slamming shut, and people started to notice the relentless determination that refused to be silenced. The first hint of success ignited hope that had been buried under years of struggle. Nights of doubt transformed into nights of planning, dreaming, and preparing for the next move. He realized that turning points are not always grand or obvious. Sometimes they arrive quietly, demanding only faith and courage to recognize them. Each choice, each step, each lesson learned at the breaking point now formed a map leading him closer to the dream he had carried since childhood. He understood that he was no longer just surviving. He was actively creating the life he envisioned. The turning point was not just an event, it was a revelation. Strength, persistence, and unwavering belief can shift destiny itself. With renewed energy, he faced challenges with strategy instead of fear, with hope instead of despair. The road ahead remained difficult, but now it was a path illuminated by possibility, a journey guided by vision, and a future shaped by the courage to rise. From this moment on, nothing could stop him from pursuing the greatness that had always been his right. With the turning point behind him, the real journey began, a path filled with relentless effort, sleepless nights, and constant challenges that refused to let him rest. Every day demanded focus, every hour required sacrifice, and every moment tested his patience. He worked tirelessly, learning from mistakes that once felt like failures, but now became stepping stones to mastery. Rejection still came, but they no longer defeated him. Instead, they taught him resilience and sharpened his strategy. He faced moments when the weight of responsibility threatened to crush him, yet he reminded himself that every struggle was preparing him for greatness. Nights were spent refining skills, studying competitors, and dreaming bigger than ever before. He embraced each task, no matter how small, understanding that consistency builds empires, and dedication turns vision into reality. Friends and family began to notice the transformation. Admiration replaced doubt, and his story quietly inspired those around him. Mistakes were no longer obstacles, but lessons carved into the foundation of his success. Slowly, recognition grew, opportunities multiplied, and doors that once seemed permanently closed now opened with promise. The journey was far from easy, but he had learned to navigate the hardships with patience, courage, and unwavering belief in his purpose. Every step forward was a testament to his determination, every challenge overcome a reminder that dreams are not achieved overnight, but through persistence and relentless effort. He realized that success was not just about reaching a destination, but embracing the growth, learning, and strength developed along the way. With each day, he felt closer to his dream, not because the world had changed, but because he had changed. He had transformed struggle into strength, doubt into determination, and vision into reality. This was not just a journey. It was the making of a story that would prove to the world that no obstacle, no matter how great, could stop a heart determined to rise. Finally, The day arrived when years of struggle, countless sleepless nights, and relentless effort began to show tangible results. The dreams he had carried silently in his heart were no longer distant fantasies, but reality unfolding before his eyes. Recognition came in ways he had only imagined. People who had doubted him now acknowledged his talent. Doors that were once firmly closed swung open, and opportunities multiplied in ways that felt almost magical. He stood on a stage, or in a room, or in a place that symbolized the victory he had longed for, and for the first time, he allowed himself to feel the full weight of what he had accomplished. Tears welled up, not out of relief alone, but from a deep understanding that every hardship, every failure, every moment of despair had led him here. The world could see him now, but only he knew the battles fought in silence, the nights spent dreaming while the world slept, and the courage required to take step after step when no one believed he could succeed. His achievement was not just personal. It became a beacon of hope for anyone who had ever felt powerless, a living proof that determination can defy circumstance, that persistence can overcome obstacles, and that no matter where you come from, success is possible. He shared his story quietly, with humility, knowing that inspiration was a responsibility, not a reward. This moment was more than applause or accolades. It was a declaration to himself and the world that limits exist only in minds willing to accept them. He realized that success is not the end of struggle but a continuation of effort, a journey enriched by challenges faced and lessons learned. Every smile he shared, every hand he shook, and every word he spoke carried the power of a life transformed. His big achievement was the culmination of hope, courage, and relentless action, a shining proof that dreams cannot be contained by circumstance, that a heart determined to rise will always find a way to touch greatness, and that the impossible is only a story waiting to be rewritten by those brave enough to try. Standing at the height of his achievement, he realized that his story was not just about personal victory. It carried a message meant for the world. He had faced hunger, rejection, betrayal, and countless obstacles, yet he survived, adapted, and rose higher than anyone expected. He understood now that the trials he endured were universal, that every person struggles in ways unseen, and that the measure of a life is not how easy it was, but how one responds to adversity. His journey became proof that dreams have no limits, that determination can overpower circumstance, and that no matter how harsh life hits, courage and persistence will always create a way forward. He spoke openly, sharing the lessons learned in silence, the failures that taught resilience, and the moments of despair that revealed inner strength. To anyone listening, he said, "Do not be afraid to start, do not be afraid to fail, and do not let the world define what is possible for you. Every closed door, every harsh word, every setback is not the end but a step toward growth, a challenge designed to sharpen your will. Success is not reserved for the privileged. It belongs to those who dare to believe, who refuse to quit, and who rise even when the odds are stacked against them." He encouraged others to embrace struggle as a teacher, to view obstacles as opportunities, and to hold their dreams like a torch in the darkest nights. His message was simple but powerful. No circumstance, no limitation, and no judgment can stop a determined heart. The world may try to silence you, society may try to define you, and fear may attempt to weaken you, but the fire within, once ignited, can light the path not only for yourself, but for countless others. In sharing his journey, he showed that greatness is born from perseverance, that hope survives even in despair, and that dreams are only impossible for those who stop believing. His life became a living testament that anyone from anywhere can rise beyond limitations and inspire the world by simply refusing to give up. As his journey came to its peak, he realized that every struggle, every tear, every sleepless night had led to this moment of triumph, a moment where the impossible had been conquered. He stood not just as a victor, but as a symbol of hope, proof that courage and relentless belief can rewrite destiny. The scars he carried were not reminders of pain, but badges of strength that spoke louder than words ever could. Every challenge he faced became a story of resilience, every setback a lesson in perseverance, and every dream that once seemed distant now shone as a testament to unwavering determination. He understood that life would continue testing him, yet he now faced it with unshakable confidence and gratitude. His story would echo in the hearts of those who dared to dream, proving that no matter where you start, how hard life hits, or what limits exist, a determined heart can rise, inspire, and achieve greatness beyond imagination.